So let's start off. We're actually on chapter 16. What faces I saw and what battles I fought. I was coming to a rapid end in my tour. While sometimes the days passed by painfully slow, other times it seemed like the days went too quickly. After all my injuries from September all the way through the first half of December, things became erratic for me. But something did not change, and that was the recovering face for the fallen warriors. I was already having dreams that only mentally wounded people have, and nightmares that reflected how truly worn out I really was as far as my life was concerned. I knew I had to keep it together, even if only on a daily basis I wanted to disappear into a hole in that pit of hell. When you meet death head on every day, you go through some seriously difficult issues that are almost impossible to address. For anyone, a death is difficult to deal with in almost every single aspect. Losing someone you love is like taking a kick to the head and seeing little brown spots in front of you. I was experiencing the deaths of men and women whose common denominator with me was their service to the United States. At first glance, that seems like a long way away from having a bond, but there is something much deeper. We shared the bond of sacrifice. Sacrifice is defined as forfeiture of something highly valued for the sake of one considered to have a greater value or claim. All of us in Iraq were willing and more than able to forfeit our lives for the sake of freedom. We were not sacrificing our lives for general freedom, but for the freedom of a nation that had been tortured for a period of 24 years by a single man with too much power. When I saw the 146 different bodies of American servicemen and women we dealt with, I saw sacrifice and I saw nobility. I did not know the many people that I processed, with few exceptions, but I did meet them in the hours I spent with them. I would look at the picture of a little boy in some studio smiling, or some little girl in her first light little pastel dress. I would think of my little girl and say, "Hey, here's mine." I would think to myself, "Don't worry, she will know you were a hero." I would see pictures of friends together gathered somewhere, and imagine how close they must have been to have that particular binding memory. I knew that once those bodies were shipped back to the States, there would be tears and some statement about dying for a cause you believed in. I also looked on the Iraqi civilian bodies that I processed, and I imagined what life was like for them. When I went through those periods, I was in absolute silence, and my mind would take me to some village. I would see little kids no older than 6 playing soccer, and all of a sudden the ground would come up in one colossal explosion. Every time I had that vision, I would take a breath and try to erase it. I was too damn affected by what I went through to be able to detach myself from every vision that I had. I could not even listen to the things about Afghanistan because frankly I didn't want to think about the horrors that may be taking place over there. Everyone in Iraq was trying to be a real patriot, to be the epitome of the definition of the word patriot. Patriot is defined as one who loves his or her country and supports its authority and interests. I guess one can make that argument that Saddam's supporters were patriots trying to defend their own way of life, even if that way was an oppressive and villainous government interested in torture, pain, suffering, and domination. What we fought for was some semblance of freedom and democracy, so it's all relative to what a person chooses to believe and to follow. I wanted to fight for each face of the fallen, their honor, their memory, and their family. I wanted to bring some peace early on. Death was the vehicle that I was using to do my job. I guess in some ways I was driving a hearse while others were driving race cars. After my injury, everything that I saw was suffering and pain, and no matter what I did, none of that wanted to go away. I remember a 40-year-old soldier that was the 50th Mississippi native to be killed during the war. This soldier was a sergeant first class who was serving his second tour of duty in Iraq when he was killed. The sergeant was in the military service for 19 years, and he was known as a happy-go-lucky type of guy that lit up the room. I remember him because he was tall and had an imposing figure. His death came because of a damn mortar attack. Those types of attacks were always unexpected, and they somehow always caught someone off guard. When this happened, I remembered wondering if he got caught trying to save someone, or perhaps trying hard to fight back. This was why it was so difficult to be in the theater sometimes, because there was no immunity and there was no safe place to go anywhere. The base was not a deterrent for the enemy, because they had their cause of destroying the infidels, whichever way they could. I was so numb to it all that I didn't process anything other than deep hurt. I would go on and find myself processing soldiers willing to make the sacrifice that would rob them of their life and their future plans. One such case was with a female private from the state of California. This particular case was interesting because it was non-combat related, so it made me question if perhaps the private had committed suicide. But I never asked, or at least not anymore, simply because I knew that war could get to anyone at any point in time. When I saw this private, I wondered if she felt frustrated and if she wondered about returning home. I wondered if she had ambitions to be someone special in the military at some point, or if she had dreams of a normal civilian life. There was talk of an investigation into her death, but an investigation meant that their deaths would be swept under the rug to prevent there was talk of an investigation into her death, but an investigation meant that their deaths would be swept under the rug to prevent any form of scandal from breaking out. War plays with your head to a great extent. Even in my worst days, I never thought of ending things, and I always watched my back to make sure that I had another day.